FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
And welcome. You are listening to, and perhaps even watching, the Financial Survival Network. Well, my question is this for you. Are we seeing the resurgence of inflation? You look at commodity prices, it would certainly appear that that could be the case. It's a little early, but we had a massive stimulus bill that added $6 trillion to the U.S. deficit, federal deficit, and we've had multi-trillion-dollar bailouts by the Federal Reserve, creation of currency units with complete and total abandonment. Do you think inflation's getting higher? Are you noticing it in your life? Perhaps oil is cheaper, but many things are more expensive. Maybe not so much at the consumer level, but they will get there if in fact we are having commodity price inflation. Just send us an email. Let us know your thoughts. kl@kerrylutz.com. Well, our good friend is back with us, Lobo Tiggre. And Lobo, you've got your opinion about inflation. What do you think is going on here?
Well, a couple of things. One is, I do credit that there is deflationary pressure. If you have a bunch of people out of work and they're trying to save, not everybody is taking their stimulus check. It's not even stimulus check. We shouldn't call it that. Not everybody's taking their hand out and going to Walmart to buy a flat screen TV. Some people are being sensible, and the savings rate did, kick upwards, and that is deflationary when people spend less, and it can absorb some of the money printing that we all know is happening. We could get in a long conversation about inflation. My bottom line, though, is I think at the end of the day, the printing press always wins. You could have deflationary pressures near term. I wouldn't necessarily expect a lot or how long, but at the end of the day, the printing press always wins. And I think how we know that we're getting real inflation. Well, one, to answer your question earlier, I go to the supermarket, nothing's cheaper, everything's more. And okay, I can fill my gas tank a little bit cheaper now, but almost everything else is more. My cost of living is going up, not down. But more importantly, as a Austrian school thinker, I'm looking at the price of gold. And in my mind, it's not really the price of gold, it's the price of the dollar in real money. And the price of the dollar is moving, right? The high gold prices we're seeing, flipping it the other way, are telling us that's inflation. You could say, forget about the BLS numbers. What is the price of gold? That is your inflation indicator. So gold near $2,000 or fluctuating, under that is telling us we have high inflation.
And that is an interesting thing. So we see these short-term declines. Gold was almost up to $2,100. Then it's back into the mid 1800s. It hit supported 1850. And now are we to say, well, maybe inflation isn't taking off, maybe gold isn't going to go up that much, or do we have to deal in longer time periods to really gain an appreciation for what prices are really doing?
Sure, I think that's classic. You even in the olden days where you actually printed up money and set it loose in the economy, it took months or years for all of that to work itself through. You literally printed new money and you paid government obligations with it, and those people immediately went out and spent it, or gave themselves raises or their employees raises and so on. And then those people spent. It takes time to work itself through. This is a well documented over history economic factor. So the fact that gold can fluctuate in a week or a month or something like that isn't really all that relevant. You look at the big trend. Now, all right, if you're a technician and it breaks below a key support level, that may communicate something to you. But in terms of what we're talking about, in terms of inflation, we have, in a commoditative environment, we have negative real rates, we have fiscal stimulus, we have all the things that are extremely bullish for monetary metals. And I say that deliberately because I don't just mean gold, I mean silver too, which I absolutely do see as a monetary metal, not just another industrial metal, as some people, I think, mistakenly now believe.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. And all the things that we need to buy, insurance, for instance. I have not seen my insurance bill go down, although I did see it go down a little bit. They cut my insurance by 180 something dollars because during COVID, during the lockdown, nobody was driving. So there were no accidents. And benevolently, they gave us back 180 bucks, me. But that's the only time I've ever seen these needs. Health insurance keeps going up, pharmaceuticals, all the things in life that you need keep going up.
I tweeted about that just, I think yesterday or day before yesterday. There was an article where somebody on the Wall Street Journal or whatever went through, and if you look at the things that are deflationary and you look at the things that prices are going up, it's the stuff you actually need and maybe hard to get or harder to get now that's going up. And so there's deflationary pressure in the big cities because of the exodus. That's not a good thing, right? That's not a sign of a healthy economy to have an exodus from New York City and LA and Chicago and all these things. And those decreases in rents and real estate prices are offset by increases. You're seeing record increases in home prices, single family homes out in the burbs or in the rural areas. So, that's not deflationary. It's where we see these things tells me really that even the most optimistic news is like the car sales went up, but it was used car sales that went up. The inflation that we saw in used car sales, that's not a good thing. What does that tell you about what the average car buyer is experiencing out there? So yeah, I see both lots of signs of inflation expressed in gold itself, as well as in terms of things we really need, as you're saying. But I also see that as problematic about the economy. I don't want to get too political here, but there's politics involved too, and how there's reported, and people who want to see the economy in a positive light or not. I don't want to take sides on that fight, but I think that the harm done by the shutdowns is still working its way through, and it's vast and not something, you just can't shut down a global economy and expect it to spring back. Okay, it springs back 80% to where it was before. That's still a 20% decline. That's a disaster.
Complete unmitigated disaster. And don't even get me started on the lockdowns and the response to the pandemic, because it really, the economy was going down anyway. And I think the repo crisis was the tip off. So now they can just blame it all on COVID. Not our fault, COVID, the plague. But
yes,
we all know that things were bad before and getting worse.
Sorry, let me jump in, Kerry, because I think that's actually really important. I don't want to wear my tinfoil hat here. But you think about how this whole thing's been managed, and now nothing is anybody's fault. Like, imagine that you are the powers that be behind the scenes, manipulating all these international financial arrangements and stuff. And you realize that the bleep was about to hit the fan, like after the repo moment, after the Powell pivot, and you're looking at that, and you're seeing that the iceberg is in front of the bow of the Titanic, and there is no way you're going to miss that thing. Well, suddenly you rebrand the iceberg. Oh, that's all COVID. Unforeseeable. Nobody could have seen this coming. Yes, what a fantastic excuse. Everybody gets to hold on to their jobs. No heads roll. It's nobody's fault.
Isn't it great?
That's a story. I can't tell you it's true, but wow, how convenient.
Yeah, and it's so convenient, and it's nobody's fault. No accountability, which means that the voters don't really understand what happened, and they just think the government was trying to help. And yet every country in the world did this, few minor exceptions. That's what I find rather shocking too. Normally, to get every country in the world to work together to fight a common enemy is extremely difficult. It never happens. And here, man, they just magically all got together under the ambit of the World Health Organization, shut everything down. And maybe they're experimenting and they want to see, well, once we open it up, maybe we'll have this great V-shaped recovery. once everything really opens up. I can tell you, I'm in Florida and they opened everything up, a few minor exceptions, and things have gotten really busy really fast. Because one thing, when you shut everybody down, Libra, it's like there's all this pent up demand, even if they can't afford it. You're just going to max out your credit card because, what else are you going to do? It's time to celebrate. Happy days are here again.
That's another interesting point, Kerry. I don't know how far we want to go down this rabbit hole, but that's really interesting. I remember thinking as a university student and getting all the nonsense my economics teachers were spoon feeding me, and all this stuff about consumer confidence and how important confidence, which in my mind really just tells me it's a con game. But anyway,
yeah, that's the root of confidence is con.
Right, but I got to thinking, well, if the economy is all about confidence, and you have an event like the Great Depression or something, how do you restore confidence? How do you tell a farmer who can't sell his crops and his farm's being repoed, how do you tell him to have confidence? He's not going to have confidence. That the whole idea seemed like, if it's true that economies grow when confidence grows, no economy can ever recover from any kind of serious downturn because you destroy confidence. So obviously there has to be something else going on here. It can't just be confidence. And of course, the reality is that reality matters. There is reality. You have to eat. And whether it's just pent up demand is one thing, but the other thing is you have to eat. You have to work. You run out of money at some point sitting at home twiddling your thumbs. If you're in the 1930s and your crop is destroyed, you go out and you plant what you can. You can't just sit there and say, woe is me. Today, you lost your job as a bartender or Uber driver. Well, you go out and you wash windows, whatever. You do what you can because you have to eat. So when you allow an economy to reopen, yes, people will go out to work, and it's not confidence, it's necessity. And that tells you sort of, what your base level economy is. Economy that's driven by necessity, that's a floor. That's a real floor. And then all these manipulations and confidence games on top of that can build it to silly levels, which eventually liquidate. But so again, I don't want to go too long, but I just think that's important for people to understand out there, that reality matters, that there is a base level economy where people actually have to go out and work in order to be able to live.
In Florida, where I live, during the pandemic, most construction sites were never shut down. They were considered vital infrastructure, regardless whether they were building $10 million mansions or whether they were building efficiency studio apartments. It was considered vital infrastructure. They never shut down. They were supposed to social distance. Evidently, that was a big cause of COVID among younger people. Didn't work out too good. But I just thought it was really funny. And, we had this massive housing boom from the diaspora taking place from blue states and blue cities into red states and red cities. Yeah, but there is some baseline, like you said. There is some minimum economic activity that must take place, or I guess we'll all be fighting in the streets and fighting over food riots. It'll be like that Arnold Schwarzenegger movie where I think it was The Running Man, where he's a helicopter pilot and they shoot, given the order to shoot on crowds who are having food riots in LA. He refuses, and he winds up being set up for killing people rioting. And, I guess when you go below that basic sustainable level, that minimum sustenance level, then things really break down quickly. One final thing, with the riots and everything else, which I believe are contrived and totally orchestrated, do you think we're hitting the point where the underpinnings of society are beginning to crumble?
Well, it's hard to say no. I'm 55, and so I'm not a long gray beard here. I did not see the Watts riots, and personally, I didn't witness that kind of upheaval back in the 60s. I was a toddler, but I've never seen the level of acrimony and hatred the way it is now. It's not just disagreement. It's not just my side is always right or your side, but these people hate each other now. And even, the former tree huggers are willing to go to violence. They're ready to fight with their fists or worse, which I haven't seen before. So it is very alarming. But not to quote Warren Buffett here, but the bedrock of American society, of civilization, what it means to be American, that kind of down home, earthy, little house in the prairie goodness that is the foundation of America, that's enormously strong and widespread. And it's hard for me to see that disintegrating overnight. And when there's an earthquake in China or Azerbaijan or whatever, and the outpouring of help and support and donations, it's always the United States first. It's always the United States, the largest amount of money. The caring and generosity of America and the American psyche and those things that made this the land of the free and the home of the brave, all that stuff. I don't want to sound like I'm being overly patriotic here, because I'm deeply skeptical of the United States government, but I love America. There's a difference between those two things.
Very.
And I believe in America, and I think the government and its opposition, they can wreak a great deal of harm, but I would not expect that bedrock of what America is to be destroyed easily.
All right, and I hope you're right. I do remember the riots in the 60s. I lived 20 minutes outside of Newark in an affluent suburb, only 12 years old or so, and they were threatening to come up into the wealthy suburbs, and they set up a National Guard machine gun nest, the 50 caliber machine gun, and sandbags all around it, facing towards Newark, and they were ready to mow them down, I guess, or at least probably more of a disincentive to come up to our area. So I do remember this, and it did touch me in some way. So what we're seeing now, though, is far worse than anything I ever saw then, but these are all orchestrated. The ones in the 60s were largely spontaneous eruptions by blacks over conditions, and over the death of Martin Luther King as well. Hopefully you're right, though. I think there are core beliefs in the country. It might have weakened for a certain portion of the population, but there's a core belief. There's something that keeps us together as a country, and hopefully that will continue. Hey, Lobo, just tell us where your website is, where to find you these days.
All right, well, it is independentspeculator.com. People may remember me as Louis James from my Casey research days. So I'd like to remind you, yes, that is him. It's still me. I've come out of the closet, as it were, with my real name, independentspeculator.com. We have a free weekly digest, which I promise we will not spam you with a daily barrage of advertisements. We don't do that to our readers. We respect them. Of course, I invite you to do business with me if you want. And let me just say real quick, because we talked a lot of politics, all the stuff that's going on now that we've talked about, I think is extremely bullish for gold and silver. I think there is a potential, if we get another market meltdown, a very deserved market meltdown, for gold and silver to get whacked in the short term. That happened in March, it happened in 2008, it'll happen again. But that would be a buying opportunity in my view. It's one I am personally doing everything I can to accumulate cash in front of, because I think it would be a spectacular foundation, maybe the last stop before the train really leaves the station and goes on to brighter and better things.
I totally agree with you. Any question for Lobo? The Lobo Tiggre, the writer formerly known as Louis James. Just send us an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. Twitter feed @KerryLutz, Facebook page, Financial Survival Network. Of course, our website, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Lobo, we'll talk to you again real soon. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you, Kerry.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.